I will give credit to the I guess they're the plaintiffs to have the courage to do
I
this.
do believe both sides have the best interest of the sport, what they believe is the best interest of the sport at heart.
It definitely changes having two super speedways in the first two rounds, but that's why Kansas was really important.
You know, you never know when you're just going to have an off weekend.
I've kind of gotten the ability to have the platform that I want, and it is my platform, and I can speak to whatever I feel like talking about.
We were in the mix, and it makes it a lot more fun when you're in the mix than you are just, struggling and trying to figure out what direction to go.
Yeah, it's tough, and sorry for being bouncy, the roads here. They have, the all-you-can-eat buffet every single day of the week. People are going to get tired of it, right? So if it's a special thing, I think people get more excited for it.
Hi, Bo.
Raise your hand up so she can see it. There you go.
So even as I think it was,
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Very head-scratching why at the beginning all four of us just went instantly straight to the back. We just really struggled.
Well, welcome on to the Backstretch. I'm News 5's Heather Williams. And before I talk about racing, I want to talk a little bit about this past week. And I'm going to talk about it more in my final thought. But it has been a very difficult week for the people here in Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia. Aftermath of Hurricane Helene absolutely devastated entire communities. It's going to be a long road to recovery. And I know we're not the only ones, or absolutely other parts of the country, particularly the Southeast, that are devastated, particularly Asheville, which is not too far from here, and parts of Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas. So I just want to put in perspective that everything that we talk about here on racing, it's definitely a wanted and needed distraction, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not super important. There are a lot of people that lost their loved ones, their livelihood. And so I'm going to just encourage people to, the next time you want to fire off an angry tweet or an angry Facebook post about someone or something in NASCAR that you don't think is right or appropriate, or, someone that's not to your liking, just remember that this is just a game. It's just entertainment. And there are much bigger things in this world. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, my final thought, but I just didn't want to jump right into this before we addressed, kind of what my life has been like over the last week covering the devastation up here, because it's been a rough week for sure. And the people of this part of the country are definitely in my thoughts and prayers because of what they've gone through. As far as this week's podcast goes, our guest is William Byron. He is in the heat of the NASCAR playoffs, advanced from the first round, had a really good race, first race out of the second round at Kansas. So we'll talk about kind of like his approach to the playoffs and what he learned from last year, having as good a season that he had, I think finishing fourth or third in the final, I think it was fourth in the final playoff standing. So always great to talk to Willie B. I'm also going to ask him what Legos he's currently working on, because if you don't know this, he's like a master level Lego creator. He was on Lego Masters. So I always like to keep up on what he's doing in that vein. Chris will be here as always. The hot topic that Chris and I will be talking about is the lawsuit between 2311 Front Row Motorsports and NASCAR. The antitrust implications, what it'll mean for the sport, what it'll mean for those two teams going forward. To be fair, Chris's segment, we taped it on Tuesday, so not super, or Wednesday rather. It was Wednesday when the lawsuit came out. So we hadn't had a chance to really go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Neither ones were super familiar with the actual meat of the lawsuit. So we'll kind of talk a little broader and just like general implications of what suing NASCAR might mean for the sport and for those two teams. And then, of course, always we'll look forward to Talladega. So let's get going. Joining us now is our crew chief, Chris Carrier, who also is the crew chief of the number 75 truck in the Camping World Truck Series. Chris, I think we have to start with the enormous elephant in the room. NASCAR is being sued by 2311 Racing as well as Front Row Motorsports. I think once they didn't sign the charter and everybody else did, you kind of saw this coming. I know I certainly heard rumors of this being the eventual outcome if they couldn't get something wrapped up in the next couple of days. So before we talk about kind of what they're talking about, what their issues are, let's first talk about, I mean, how big is this that teams are suing a national sanctioning body?
I've struggled all day thinking about this, and I can't, Heather, I can't really quite grasp the enormity of it, and what the short-term and long-term ramifications, effects, reactions will be. I will say this, I will give credit to the I guess they're the plaintiffs, to have the courage to do this. I don't think you and I discussed before the podcast here that, Michael Jordan's not going to fear anything or anybody. I mean, he's a name, an icon, a personality, bigger than I don't know anybody else in at least the sports entertainment venue or community. So it doesn't, it doesn't really shock me that he would. Now, Front Row Motorsports, Bob Jenkins is the owner. I believe there may be other owners involved in that. I'm not sure, but it kind of like, okay, they're probably, I would think they're taking a little bit more of a risk. But now at the end of the day, these people are obviously, they are convinced that there's an issue and that they're on the short end of the stick, wrong side of the issue, and they feel like this is, what's being done, or what's NASCAR wants to go forward with all the specifics of the whole deal is not fair, and they're to the point to where, okay, we're going to take legal action. So I don't know. I don't know that I've never experienced anything like this as far in my racing career, which is put right at 50 years. I've never known anything. I heard stories about the first race at Talladega many years ago when there was safety issues. The tires were blowing out, and a lot of the drivers, the heads up drivers, sat out the race, and Bill France and NASCAR went on and ran the race and got people from other places and so on and so forth and went on. That doesn't come close to this. I really don't think this is pretty major, and I'm still trying to wrap my arms around it.
So this basically has to do with the charter agreement. This is what they're upset about. So maybe for people that don't really understand, a charter is like a franchise, but not like a franchise because it's not in perpetuity. Like when you buy the Charlotte Hornets, it's yours until you sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
That's the way I look at it.
So, but if you buy a NASCAR franchise, it's yours for the duration of the franchise agreement. And then at the end of the agreement, it might be yours. NASCAR might take it back. And if my understanding, that's the point of contention here, correct?
That puts it, you put it as accurately as it can be to my understanding at this point. And of course, none of us, well, I'm not going to say none of us, I don't, but probably nobody outside the actual teams or NASCAR's the legal people and so on really understand all the specifics of this, nor is it, I don't consider it really to be my business, but it's all about, let's face it, it's all about funds and how those are distributed, and also the power that the teams have to make their own decisions and to be able to be independent and supply themselves and depend on themselves and not be controlled. So beyond that, any other descriptions kind of beyond my education about it. But did you said it? When the two teams didn't sign the agreement, the current agreement that's on the table, out of 15 car owners, I believe it is, that these two teams didn't sign it, then it was kind of like, everybody knew in the back of their mind, said, "Oh boy, this could get ugly," and it might be fixing to get ugly.
So the question for me is, you have two of the people that are involved in this lawsuit in one way or another still racing for the playoffs, right? Denny Hamlin, the owner of 23XI, is still in the playoffs. Tyler Reddick, a driver for 23XI, is still in the playoffs. This has got to affect their playoff run, right? Because I would think at the minimum, they are absolutely under a microscope by NASCAR. They better have every I dotted and every T crossed. If they're 1/gazillionth of an inch off of tech, they're going to get hammered.
Yeah, and I have personally noticed, just stuck out at me a little bit. It seems like the last month, 6 weeks, it seems like Denny has been, I don't know if the word is distracted, confused in some of his interviews and his own podcast and answering questions and being in the public eye.
Do you think it's distraction, or do you think he doesn't really know how to address it without breaking some sort of confidentiality?
I think it's all of that. I just don't. It's almost like he and Denny likes to talk, which that's fine, but
sport needs some of those guys.
That's right, and he likes to speak his mind and so on and so forth, and be brutally honest when sometimes it may not be his crew chief's probably saying, "Oh gosh, don't do that," but he's been to me, he's almost like you said, he doesn't know what the limit is, how much he should say or not say, and how much even to touch on it. And even when he's talking about X and O racing things, you can almost see through and say, man, there's something else on his mind. He's not in the way they've raced. If you think about that stretch there where Heather, there was a couple races, man, they were having trouble beating the pace car, and you're like, what is going on here? And I don't know whether this is all the effect of what. Listen, when you're distracted, this business, especially as a driver, and you talk about a driver owner and being involved in the whole thing and having input on the preparation and the setup and stuff, which I'm sure Denny does. It takes 100% of your brain cells. It's all you can do. And especially when you're, trying to win a championship and win races at the same time, when you got something like this on your mind and back in your head and your brain and on your heart, he thinks about it, every minute of every day. And, it's mentally, psychologically, the guy has to be spread pretty thin. Because he's in the eye of the storm. Not only he's a driver, he's a co-owner.
Right.
And I don't know. I can't really, to be honest with you, I can't quite imagine that. I mean,
well, and ever since the regular season ended, Tyler's performance has been off a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to, and I'm assuming it has to do with this lawsuit, but I was listening to Sirius XM radio on, this is Monday. And Tyler Reddick is usually on there on Mondays, and he canceled because they had an all hands on deck meeting at 23XI. And Daniel Trotta and Larry Mack, who were the program he was supposed to be on, said Tyler never misses. He's been on when he's been sick, when they've raced, except for if they've raced on Monday, he's always on there. So you knew something big was happening.
Right.
And so, I think this is affecting everyone within the organization performance. I mean, 23XI shows up to Chicago, and to Kansas. We're going to transition to that a little bit, and they're out to lunch, right? And this is a track that they won 3 straight races and 4 out of 5 in a row or something like that. I mean, just something insane. And Denny won a race there in the middle of that streak as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't even get in the top 10.
Well, I mean, if you think about all the people at that shop that is working on and involved in the preparation of those cars and involved in the decision making and just every little bit that it takes, every the thousands of things that are done before each time a car goes to the racetrack to a cup race. Those people, Heather, they're all human, and they're hearing all this, and they got to be sitting there thinking, what's going to happen?
Right.
Now, you can't look away from the fact that, they may be sitting there thinking like, is our race team going to go away? Are we going to be here? Or where's this going to? How long is it going to last? What's the next steps? Now, the people at the top, Michael Jordan, he's probably pretty confident in this to say, look, we're going to come out on this. We're going to be okay. I have no thoughts of leaving racing and say, okay, we're going away. I don't want to do this. I don't think he's about that whatsoever.
Well, they've invested way too much money.
Way too much. But even still now, that the people down the ladder, down the steps, and the people that are the boots on the ground, as we say, the meat and potatoes of that race team that do the actual work and do the actual hours putting into it every week, every day for every race. And now the pressure's on trying to win a championship or win races and so on and so forth. Now it's like, oh my goodness, and even though Denny Hamlin drives for another team, he owns this team, and his people at Joe Gibbs Racing are saying, oh gosh, that's our driver that owns this team. And now it's got to this. They are now going to go to each corner and come out swinging. And it stuff like that just works on you. And to me, the performance going downhill, it's not a surprise. And the worry for the future, they're going to go to Talladega, and they're like you're talking about, they're well, my God, we're going to be down there a week just trying to get through inspection.
Right.
The race will be over time we get through one or two stages of it. So I can't fathom having to process that being a crew chief, or if I was a fabricator or a mechanic or the hauler driver or the pit crew or the spotter or whoever it might be in that race team, much less the driver and a part owner. And it's a pretty tough situation. It's pretty tough. I really, to be honest with you, I hope and pray that this can get rectified before it goes too far. And I hope both parties can, maybe the other teams involved too, can go in and have some civil discussions and say, here's where we can balance this, and nobody takes the I'm not budging attitude of it. So we'll just have to see how this plays out. But this is like nothing that I've ever experienced or heard of or watched in NASCAR racing. Or
And-
for that matter, I don't know, any other type of
Or any other sport,
professional
but this sport is a little different because it is owned by a
It is.
family.
It
It's not
is.
owned by in baseball, the owners own the league sort of, and then there's a
Mhm.
commissioner that they hire to protect their interests. And the same thing with football and basketball.
Mhm.
So this is different than any of those sports.
It is. You have one family that's owned the organization ever since the beginning. They started the thing, and they've, they're proud of it, and they're confident in
We
it.
should be proud of it. It's a great
Absolutely.
sport and a brilliant idea. But I think this is just my opinion coming through that, and I don't believe the whole family is like this. I believe there are people in the family that want to move the sport forward and evolve. But
Oh, yeah.
but like everything, things evolve.
Mhm.
And so I think that it would behoove both sides, both 23XI and Front Row Motorsports, as well as NASCAR, to be more open to all issues here.
I think so. And I don't really know.
Because I do believe both sides have the best interest of the sport, what
Oh,
they
yes.
believe is the best interest of the sport at heart.
I do. I don't think Michael Jordan or Denny Hamlin or the people at 23XI nor Front Row Motorsports would be doing this just to say, well, I'm just going to do this despite NASCAR, or no, we've got selfish reasons. I think they're looking at it and saying, we feel like the balance is not right. The balance is unfair, and they're asking us to accept things as race team owners and proprietors in this that is hindering us, that is handcuffing us. And when they say us, I think they mean all 15 and whoever other future charter owners may be. And they're both wanting to expand their organizations to have more charters.
I
than
mean,
what
I
they
don't
have
think there's
now.
I don't think there's any coincidence that the guys that are looking to expand
No,
are the
I don't
ones that
think
are
so either.
right, because before they invest, because what did they say that McLeod's charter went for last year? 40 million or something like
It
that.
was some astronomical number.
But
that
so
I'm
if
like,
before
"Ugh."
they invest that kind of money, they
Absolutely.
want to make sure they're getting something for it. Because
Yeah.
the way it is now, you buy a charter with 7 years when this agreement's up, it's worth nothing.
Yeah, and I don't know.
I mean,
That,
even
that
for
kind
Michael,
of sounds
even for Michael,
unbalanced.
even for Michael Jordan,
Even for
40 million is a lot of cheap.
Well, these, Michael Jordan is a guy that represents the new wave of NASCAR owners. And yes, the Rick Hendricks and the Roger Penske's and the Richard Childresses and so on and so forth, Joe Gibbs even are, they're the old school, the ones that's been there. And I like to call those guys, most of them anyway, like true blood, bone deep racers that are that's what they are, that they are racers. And they've invested a lot of money and risk a lot of money over the years just to stay in it. Now, I'm not saying they didn't get a lot of that back. They probably did through sponsorship money, purse money, so winning, so on and so forth. But Michael Jordan is a guy that now wait a minute, I love racing, but this is a business to me. And
Well, I think the biggest difference between the two is that when Roger Penske and and Rick Hendrick and Richard Childress got into the sport, it didn't cost anything.
No.
And they were
No.
granted original charters, founding
Mhm.
charters.
Mhm.
Now people that want charters have to buy charters
buy into
from
it.
somebody who has one.
That's good.
So that's a huge investment that
Yep.
those guys didn't have to make. So they made money off of NASCAR.
Yeah.
Whereas, these new owners are having to invest money into NASCAR. I think that's the biggest difference. I think that's why
it is too.
Childress and Penske and those guys, a track house or one of these newer teams, I'm a little more surprised Spire were willing to just sign, but I mean, I can understand why those guys signed. I mean, they
Mhm.
didn't have to invest $40
No.
million in a charter.
No, it was a lot easier for them, and they've been around a lot longer. So
Right.
it just kind of, smashed right through there, just kind of slid right through there. And I don't know all the particulars, but I just hope that the thing that cooler heads can prevail and we can have some discussion and it can be a little bit of give and take and, get this thing resolved before it goes too far and makes it ugly and really adversely impacts the sport.
For sure. I want to transition over to Kansas because we are here to talk about racing. It's not a business podcast, although
Yes, ma'am.
sometimes the things intersect.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
Ross Chastain comes in and absolutely crashes the party. He did it also at Phoenix last year. What is Ross Chastain and Trackhouse Racing? What are they? Are they a team that has, I mean, to me, they seem like they're a team that's a championship level team, but doesn't have the consistency. And is that because they're a new team?
I think that's a good way to put it. And we can talk about other teams that are kind of right in that same boat.
23-11.
23-11. You also, you look at, you can't say Hendrick is this. They're a championship contending team every year and a race winning contending team every week or every race. But like Alex Bowman,
Right.
is he, where does he stand? Now he's he got in the playoffs, won a race at Chicago and so forth, but Chastain is a guy, let's face it, we know that Chastain is a premier elite level driver. He's proven that. His team is fairly young and it's coming along, and they are probably changing things and maybe changing a few people here and there along the way, trying to get to that they all want to be like a Hendrick or a Penske or a Gibbs. That's the targets of these guys. Well, that's not an easy mountain to climb. So they're coming along, and they probably went to Kansas and they felt like they had a good package, and maybe there was some things there that there had been testing a little bit along the way, and they felt like, look, this may work. We don't know for sure. This package may work, but what do we got to lose? And you got a guy that's like an elite driver, and when he gets a good car, he's going to say, look, I'm going to wear these people out today because I'm motivated from the fact that I'm not chasing that championship. And they just had a superb day. I mean, like you say, they just beat them like a bunch of stray dogs or something. And good for him. You know, he's an elite driver. That team is building and building, but they are taking those steps gradually to be a every year championship contending team. They're just not quite there yet. The consistency is what's hard.
So when you look at the drivers that are in the playoffs, because all 12 of them went to Kansas hoping to win to save themselves as we go into the brutal next two races that are Talladega and the Roval. So if you're these 12 drivers going to these next two races, what is your mindset? Because I mean, these are landmines.
They are landmines, and I'll be honest with you, Heather. If I was anywhere from about third or fourth place in the standings right now, all the way to the guys that are a couple of spots below the cutoff line, though that's where I would be the most nervous, simply because you don't want to do something that's going to shoot yourself in the foot. Now, the guys at the top, they're probably okay enough to think, look, I can just use my head. Don't do anything stupid on the racetrack. Don't do anything stupid on pit road. Don't set myself up for failure. You know, keep trying to do the best I can to make sure that I have a good chance to finish in the top 10 and have a clean day and come out of there. And the guys at the very bottom, they're just going to say, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to go out there and try to lead. I'm going to try to win both stages. I'm going to try to be there at the end. I'm going to take chances, because at the end of the day, what I have to lose. It's those guys to me that are in the middle that still have their destiny in their hands. That, you know, the guys that are just a few points out, you don't want to go out there and wreck in the first 25 laps trying to lead the race or do something stupid that your car's not capable of doing, and then say, why did I do that? I still had a chance. Why didn't I just, you know, play it cool? Same with the ones that are two or three spots up and a few points ahead. I don't, you know, they don't want to go out there and be wild men, nor can they just sit around and run all day at the back of the pack. They can't do either. They've got to be there. They've got to be trying to get stage points both stages, and also try to be in the top 10 at the end of the race to make sure they come out in a positive, you know, on the positive side of the cutoff line. So you know, Talladega is a wild card. You never know when that bomb's going to go off.
So your car owner loves Talladega, so you run it a lot.
Oh yeah.
Probably not so much to the crew chief's pleasure, but the owner likes it. So
Loves it.
how do you approach Talladega? Because it seems like, you know, Denny tried at Atlanta, which is not the same track, but the racing style is the same, to hang back, and it didn't work. It blew up in his face.
No.
So do you think it works to be aggressive, or to just race and let the luck fall where it may?
I do. I think my feeling as a crew chief is, now I'm talking more truck series, but I do think this still holds water for the Cup Series and Xfinity, that if you're out in the front with the guys that I guess are expected to be out front, have the fastest cars and the ones that run well on speedways race after race. If you're in the top lane guys, then if you can stay up there, you know, most of the day without being, gosh, I'm just driving over my head. I'm on the verge of wrecking every lap, every corner. If you can stay, I think you're better off to do that. Now, where I get worried as a crew chief is when you're back there, say about anywhere from about 13th or 14th on back to, say, 25th. To me, that's no man's land. You know, if you get back to the back of that, because you're close enough to the front where something happened in the front, you're probably not going to miss it because you're right there behind it. You know, if you're back there that far, I would tell my drivers, look, just back on up, just get away from it, because try to miss the wreck that's fixing to happen. And to me, no man's land's in that kind of probably 13th, 14th, 15th to 25th, 28th, something like that in the Cup Series. It's a little bit more. And I think most of those guys say once they get back there, they're like, I'm getting out of here. And if I can't just drive back to the front somehow or another, sometimes you can. Every now and then you'll have the right guy or the right couple guys around you. You can push your way around, especially at Talladega. You can use the other two lanes, middle or top, a little bit easier. They're a little bit more competitive. You can drive on around, get back up there. So, okay, everything's fine. I'm in the top 5, 6, 7 right now. I should be pretty safe. If not, get back there out of the way. Get away from that bomb going off. Give yourself time to miss the shrapnel. So it's hard, Heather. It's hard. You can't. Everybody will tell you. Every driver. You can make all the plans you want. You can talk to all the people you want. You can line up all the partners you want. You can do all this strategy and everything like that. But when that green flag falls, you haven't really got any friends, and you don't really have many people, if any, that you can really depend upon, drivers wise and other teams wise, because their situation is going to change throughout that whole race. If their car's not driving very good, if it's not got any speed in it or anything like that, they got some kind of issue, whatever, then it throws them off, and now you've lost your partner. And what are you going to do?
Right.
So,
Find a new partner.
Find a new partner. Find somebody you're comfortable with. The driver's got to look around. The spotter can help. Don't be around that guy, man. He's already been bumping and knocking and running in the side of everybody. Keep away from this guy, because either he's not doing a very good job racing, or his car's not very good. Whatever. Don't get around that guy. And the drivers can usually see that too. They say, I'm getting away from that cat. There's fixing to be a problem, and 99 times out of 100 there will be. So it's a crapshoot. That's now our owner Charlie Henderson. He loves it. He loves the challenge. And I can tell you, he won't be happy unless if his truck is capable of running out front. He wants that thing out front as far as it go the whole day. And that's what that kind of stuff is what motivates him to keep doing it. And he's been doing it 50 years.
William, thanks for joining us. I'm curious how you're feeling coming out of Kansas, because with a non-playoff driver winning and now heading to Talladega and the Roval, nobody's safe, and there's some crazy racing the next 2 weeks ahead. So kind of what's your feeling, your attitude?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I feel like our team is really operating well, and it was good to get a bunch of points at Kansas. So feel pretty good going into here, but definitely want to try to get a bunch of points on Sunday and be a little bit more comfortable going into the Roval.
So how do you attack Sunday? Are you chasing points? Are you trying to stay out of trouble? Like, what's your approach to Talladega?
We're gonna just be aware of our situation and try to go get a bunch of stage points if we can, if we're in a position to, and then just really work from there. So that's the goal for us, and hopefully we can get a bunch of points in the first 2 stages and kind of position ourselves well for the end.
So you're a guy that's been in the playoffs pretty consistently over the last few years. As a fan on the outside looking in, this year's playoffs look about as unpredictable as they've ever been. Do you feel that way in the inside of it?
Yeah, I mean the Roval and Kansas are really pretty much in your control. You can drive away of those tracks and perform well. So those ones are not really wild cards, but Talladega and Atlanta are definitely wild cards. So it definitely changes having 2 super speedways in the first 2 rounds, but that's why Kansas was really important.
Does it change having like kind of a different cast of drivers? Even in the second round, there's some drivers that aren't normally this deep in the playoffs, because I feel like the guys that race up front, you all know what to expect from each other all the time, and you kind of know how guys are going to rate you. But there's kind of some different guys in the mix this year. Does that change anything for you guys?
No, I mean, not really. I think we really just focus on ourselves as a team. Really the whole time. I mean, I think as soon as you start to worry too much about someone else, it's just you stop doing your job. So that's really my mindset. I know my team is the same way.
You guys got out to such a quick start, and then the summer was probably not what you guys wanted, but I've noticed you guys have consistently and kind of quietly been really good in the playoffs, just, knocking off consistent. Like you said, you got a decent amount of points last week at Kansas. How do you feel about your performance in the playoffs so far?
Yeah, it's been okay. I mean, I think last week was really good, and I think that was one of those banner days that we really needed to start around. So really like that. And then the first round was a bit of a struggle for us. I think Atlanta was good. We were up front a lot at Atlanta. Had a really good average running position and finished well. Probably finished a little bit worse than we could have or should have. But yeah, I think the first round was a bit up and down after the first race, but feel good about this round and feel like we can excel at these tracks.
Have you learned anything specifically from last year? Because last year obviously was your best season. That's helped you in the playoffs this year. Was there something you learned through that run?
I think just being, just kind of sticking to what we did all year, that got us to this point. Nothing really changed in the playoffs, other than just, I feel like learning from the round of 8 and what that took to advance and just kind of understanding how that plays out. So yeah, I'm kind of looking this year at how that's going to go. Hopefully we can get to that point, and then yeah, just trying to be a little bit better.
I feel like every time I talk to you, I want to ask this question just because. Can you hear me? Because you're a little frozen. Okay. I feel like I want to ask this question every time I talk to you, just because my nephew loves Lego, so I kind of need to know what's the hottest thing out there. Are you working on anything fun right now?
Yeah, I'm working on the Mercedes F1 car right now. So
Oh,
working on that here on the bus. So hopefully I can get that done by the end of the season.
cool. What kind of project is that? Like, how long is that going to take you to put together?
It really is not super long, but it's a Technic piece, so it takes a little bit longer than the normal ones.
My final thought today is going to kind of be a plea to the NASCAR community. First of all, thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for the victims of Hurricane Helene. It's been amazing. I see all the work being done in North Carolina by the NASCAR community for the folks in Western Carolina. I would ask if you have the ability or the time or the resources to maybe extend your reach into Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia. We're not that far from Asheville or Wilkesboro or some of the counties that are already being helped by NASCAR. Obviously, Bristol Motor Speedway is right here, and they've been amazing. They are a coordination point for the rescue effort in this part of the country, but we're hurting too. And so anything that you can do to help our community, I know you have your hands full in North Carolina, but even if it's just your thoughts and prayers would be greatly appreciated. I worked in the field for the first 3 days of this disaster. And if some of you have been to Western Carolina, you definitely know the devastation and that spilled right across the state line into North Carolina or into Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia. And there are a lot of people that are hurting, and there are a lot of people that are hurting that are NASCAR fans, dedicated members of our community that need help. So I know you guys are doing a lot. I just feel like on the national level that this part of the country is being a little bit forgotten. And since this is my home, I'm just asking, it doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be supplies. I know you guys have your hands full. If you can and are able, that would be great. But if you can't, just pray for us. This part of the country will probably never be the same. As bad as it is in Asheville, that's a major metropolitan city. There are lots of residents there. There's going to be federal money. There's going to be infrastructure help for them. But a town like Irwin or some of these communities like Little Germany in Washington County, I just don't know that they'll ever be recovered or the same. And so that the same is also true for some of these tiny counties right across the state line, just literally, 5 miles across the state line in Western Carolina, beyond where the cities are. Those places will probably never be built back. People will probably never go home again there. So they just need your thoughts, supports, prayers, whatever you can do for them as well. Thanks for joining us on the Backstretch. Take care, and we'll see you next week.